Hello everyone, and welcome to Counselor Feature Friday. I'm your host, Brian Urban. In these features, we hope to give you some simple tips, tidbits, and tricks to make your days easier and your patients happier. In this feature, we are going to talk about Superbills. This is a feature that has the potential to make virtually every member of your team's jobs easier, right? Whether they're talking about providers, front, back office staff, proper utilization of the Superbill enhances communication, streamlines workflow, and significantly reduces errors. So in order to show you the kind of full picture on the Superbill, what I want to do is just very quickly jump through a typical patient encounter. We're going to go through saying this is an audio, right, that we're working our way through. And we'll see how the Superbill builds and then what happens after the fact. Okay, so we're going to start here very quickly in the Counselor Insight tab. We're going to very quickly, this is fast overview, we're going to take our case history with this patient. Now there are tips and tricks as far as proper utilization of Counselor Insight, optimizing it, all kinds of good stuff. We're not going to review that on this overview. What I'm doing right now is just very quickly selecting a handful of areas within the Insight feature that will pre-populate up at the top here. So you're not writing things down, you're not having to take notes, remember things, and at the same time, Counselor will then start to build your reports in real time, which of course you can edit these on the fly, right? Very, very flexible. Now, what you may not know is that by selecting over here on the left, Counselor is also looking at these areas for potential ICD-10 codes, right? So if there are, I'll pick one that in fact, I'm not familiar with the ICD-10 code, right? If there are codes in particular where you're not familiar, right? Counselor already has those built in. So as you're going through case history, you have already started the process of building your codes, which will then inform the Superbill, which will then communicate into the claims wizard and onto a clean claim, right? So the process really starts here. So we're going to move ahead. We're going to say we've completed our case history with the patient. We'll click Export to Reports. Now we're going to start testing. Now obviously there are different ways to test depending on whether you have standalone or no compatible equipment. In this scenario, I'm just saying I'm going to get some data in place here. I've already started this audio, so we'll just finish it. That is then going to prompt the M-class classification, which, as you likely know, you can review here. It'll preset these fields, which you, of course, can modify. So anytime you can change these up depending on how you specifically want this hearing loss to be classified. Okay, and then of course the subcategories down below can store as much or as little information as you like. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to the main screen. Once again, this is a very quick overview of an audio. In fact, we're going to skip patient counseling altogether, which I would never advise. But what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to the general information tab. At this part of the workflow, we have now finished counseling the patient and we're sending them up to the front desk. Okay. Traditionally with a paper Superbill, you're filling some out on paper, you're giving it to the patient, or you're walking up to the front desk, and then someone else has the responsibility of re-entering that into a system to create an invoice and then to build the claim. Right? Counselor's saying, let's take the paper out of that process. Let's just make this go directly from the decisions the provider has made into the invoice and into the claims wizard and into a clean claim. Right? So as a provider, all you have to do is select Auto Calculate Codes. That will cause Counselor to look out across the entire visit and say, all right, based on the case history, based on the test results, what are the appropriate codes? Okay, so based on the hearing loss, we have an H90.3, right? If the hearing loss had been more complicated than that, if there's a mixed loss in the right ear and conductive in the left, Counselor would have come up with the appropriate codes for that specific combination of classifications of hearing loss between ears. Right? As you can see here, looking through the rest of the IC10 codes, there we have tinnitus bilateral, there's our noise exposure, there's that oral atresia code, right? There's no, unless you work in a pediatric facility, you're likely not going to know this code, right? Maybe. I certainly didn't. But the point is, by selecting that in the case history, in the Counselor Insight tab, it has then prompted this code. Now, based on the test results, it's generated the bundled code, 92557, and the single code of the 92567, because we had ACBC speech word rec and tympanometry with no reflex or decay. Okay. Now, we're going to very quickly just jump past the MIPS. This is voluntary, so you can complete this as needed. And then go right to the heart and soul of this Feature Friday, the Superbill. So as a provider, you could leave it here. If this is all that you neat, right? An audio temp. Very commonly though, you will click the Edit Superbill area and jump in, and you have the opportunity to add modifiers, of course. You can look up those modifiers if you'd like to see a description. In addition, you can add more to this Superbill. The focus here is to include everything that happened during that encounter, whether or not it's going through to insurance. So for example, if you want to add a box of batteries, great, go ahead and add a box of batteries. If there are other codes that you need to add, perhaps bundled codes. Maybe we did a vestibular eval along with this evaluation, right? So we can help you set up bundled line items, or line item bundles we call them, and then with one click, we've added 3 vestibular items, right? So a very, very quick way to get a comprehensive Superbill that shows everything that happened, whether or not it goes through insurance, including the codes, including the modifiers. Okay. Those of you who use, as a side note here, those of you who use the 92700 unspecified code, we're happy to work with you directly on the best utilization of these features. Okay. If you do not use the 92700 code, you can disregard this part of the Feature Friday. If you do use it, please reach out to us and we can chat through the most effective ways to use that code, because it's a very flexible code. All right. So now, as a provider, I have completed my Superbill. Okay, the patient likely has now arrived up the front desk and is waiting, right? We would then send a chat message up to the front desk. In this case, I'm going to say I'm going to send it up to Linda. The message will let Linda know the Superbill for this patient has been completed, is ready for invoicing, and now we can say something additional, like give box 312, and let's do 1 week fitting, okay? Once I click continue main screen, that chat message immediately goes out to Linda. So Linda's up at the front desk. She receives the chat message, she clicks on it, and it brings her directly into this screen. So Linda's not searching for what needs to be done. All she has to do, click on the link, right? Because there's usually enough stuff happening at the front desk. There's no reason to have to navigate through different areas. Click, you land here, okay? Linda then just has the next task of saying, all right, let's create a new invoice. Okay, so instead of having to start from scratch and then enter each line item and each code and every single little thing, Linda can simply click New Invoice. It'll take all the decisions that the provider has just made, pull them forward into an invoice, and then prep the process for the claim. Okay, from the provider perspective, by the way, once you've sent that chat message up to the front desk, you are now done. Completely done with the coding reimbursement aspect of this patient encounter. You have done your work. You've made your decisions. That information is now flowing forward to the invoice. So now from Linda here, our front office staff member, from her perspective, once she clicks New Invoice, it generates the new invoice. It brings over all the line items, all the codes, and behind the scenes, it's pulling through all the information we're going to need to build our claim. Right? So Linda's not having to look up maybe who the referring physician was or the IC10 codes, the CPTs. Our focus here is that Linda can just take the baton, right? The data flows forward. There's no reentry. We're reducing errors. We're making that process more streamlined. Okay? So here we can see all of the various services that we have in place, in addition to the one product. The one thing that will not go on the claim. Now you'll see sales tax has automatically been added. Okay, so as part of that process, it'll look to see if sales tax applies. We'll add it. Now Linda could add something new to this on the fly. Perfectly fine. If Bob got to the front desk and said, "Yeah, I need some wax guards too," great. Let's go ahead and add them. No problem whatsoever. You do not have to go back to the Superbill. You can add them at this point. Linda then moves forward and says, "Okay, let's look and see." Counselor already breaks out what the patient knows. So this would be specifically for the batteries, whereas the rest of this we're going to be submitting on a claim to the insurance. Okay, so right away, Linda can see what do I need to collect from this patient relative to the non-claimable line items in this invoice. Okay, Linda, of course, can go ahead and take payment, right, and then issue a statement to the patient if needed, right? So this process is all fine and well. And then, of course, this feeds right into claims. So if you want to set this aside and say, okay, we submit our claims on certain days, we have a billing specialist who looks at these, perfectly fine. right? It's important to note that you could stop this process and start it again at multiple points. For example, as a provider, you could create the invoice, you can create the super bill and stop there. And then someone later on could create the invoice and then the claim. Or you could stop here at creating the claim invoice and taking payment, and then someone else could pick up later. And that's all part of the appointment life cycle summary, which once again, we'll not be reviewing as part of this Feature Friday, but it enables you to see that whole life cycle of that encounter and see where things may have stopped, whether intentionally or unintentionally. The main focus there is to improve, once again, the workflow between staff members and to catch the things that we may have missed. Okay, so once again, this all flows forward into the area where we can create our new claim. Now, for those of you who perhaps are not using the Superbill at this point, one thing you may notice, or your staff may have reported, is that, gosh, it takes a long time to build a claim. I believe that it does, right? Because when the Superbill is utilized, it, like I said, it pulls that information forward. So when you get to, let's say, the diagnosis information, the IC10 codes are there, right? This is information that was decided in the visit, and you may be creating this claim 20 seconds after the patient walks to the door or 4 days after the patient walks to the door. No one has to look anything up. No one has to re-enter that information, right? Now, we didn't add a referring physician on the visit. Had we, this would autofill as well, right? So once again, we get to the screen and this would just be pre-populated. Same thing goes for the billing area, right? All of these CPT codes would autofill, okay? And the whole focus here is that, once again, bring this back to the focus of this Feature Friday, is that the Superbill is an integral component of the data generation, right? Using the intelligence to figure out what needs to, be communicated through to the front office and back office staff members for claimable and non-claimable services and products, and then providing that mechanism for moving it, right? So no one has to re-enter that information. So the Superbill is an area that can greatly improve productivity, efficiency amongst your whole team. And so we strongly encourage you to look at using that whole process, starting with using Counselor Insight, all the way through to the process, of course, of creating a clean claim. We view that as one just continual process. All right, so if you have any questions about this, if you have questions about how to customize any portions of the process that we've discussed today, please reach out to us, let us know. We're always happy to help. Thank you very much for joining us for today's Feature Friday, and as always, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.